What is going on, guys? We're back with more picks and predictions. This weekend, the UFC goes to Azerbaijan for a fight night headlined by Jamahal versus Khalil Rountree Jr. I'm excited to break down every single matchup on this card. So without further ado, let's jump right into the picks and predictions for UFC Azerbaijan. First fight on the card, we got a really low-level heavyweight matchup in Mohammed Usman versus Hamdy Abdelwahab. After last weekend seeing Kamaru Usman, you might be inclined to come in here and bet on his brother Mohammed Usman, but Mohammed Usman, not that good of a fighter, to be honest. Hamdy Abdelwahab also, even a 4-0. This is kind of the state of the low-level heavyweight division right now. We have a 4-0 fighter in the UFC. Pretty interesting, but he's coming off that split decision to Jamal Pogues 4 months ago. Mohammed Usman on the other side, coming off a loss to Thomas Peterson about 10 months ago. So Abdelwahab, being a little bit more active than Mohammed Usman here. He is undefeated, and, he is a super, juiced up type of fighter. Usman here is going to have a little bit of a reach advantage at 79 inches versus, Abdelwahab's 73 inches of reach. So that is something to note. But Usman, not really like a maestro stick and move. He's not going to fight behind that jab. I see Abdelwahab, just being really big and just crashing in to exchanges against Usman. I think that he just does a little bit more work than Usman here. I see this fight being extremely sloppy. I think Abdelwahab might land a couple takedowns too as well. That might swing some rounds in his favor. But overall, pretty unpredictable matchup between two pretty low-level heavyweights here in the first fight, but I'm going to lean Hamdy Abdelwahab to get it done on the cards. Like I said, pretty unpredictable. Not really worth it to trust any of these guys with your money. Let's move on to the next matchup. Second fight on the card, we got Tagir Ulanbekov versus Azat Maksum, and Maksum is, actually a pretty good, pretty dangerous fighter, 15-1, coming off that loss to Charles Johnson a year ago, and then we have Tagir Ulanbekov, fought earlier this year, beat Clayton Carpenter, who, is actually a pretty green, pretty good prospect in the UFC. We know Tagir Ulanbekov, he is coming out of that Khabib camp. He's going to have the wrestling advantage in this matchup, and that's kind of all this breakdown really is going to boil down to. We saw Charles Johnson, take Azat Maksum down a bit. Maksum, dangerous guy. He's one of those really, fun Kazakh flyweights to kind of watch out for, but in this fight, I just think that Tagir Ulanbekov really just holds the pace. He kind of dictates where this fight goes. I think he uses a lot of wrestling against Azat Maksum here. I think he gets it done. He could maybe find a sub here, but realistically, I think it does go to the cards. He's going to be the pick. Let's move on to the next matchup. Next fight on the card, we got a women's MMA matchup in Irina Alekseeva versus Klaudia Sygula. Alekseeva coming off almost a 2-year layoff with her last fight being a loss to Melissa Mullins. Sygula, on the other hand, her last fight was also a loss to Melissa Mullins, where she did get finished in the second round. Now, Alekseeva, she's a bit of a marauder. She just comes forward, doesn't really give a shit, and, she just kind of throws bombs walking forward, and that tends to get her taken down a lot. The thing is, Sygula, not a takedown threat at all in this matchup. I think that if Sygula did have more of the grappling side, this could be kind of an interesting matchup, but the way I see it, outside of the layoff, which is the one thing that worries me, but, then again, we saw what Kamaru Usman did. Not to say that Alekseeva is anything like Kamaru Usman, but just in general, we saw him kind of say fuck a layoff. So I think that Alekseeva, while there is that bit of a layoff risk here, I think she is a better fighter. I think she doesn't give a shit. She's going to come forward. I think she might eat a punch or two, but she's going to kind of walk Sygula down. Not really the most technical fighter, Irina Alekseeva, but I think she just kind of be tougher. She's just kind of be the one moving forward, and, I think the judges are going to like that. So I got Alekseeva winning this one. Let's move on to the next matchup. Next fight up, we got Dharya Zheleznyakova versus Melissa Mullins, and, Dharya Zheleznyakova and Melissa Mullins have fought in the past before, and Melissa Mullins did finish her in the first round by ground and pound. So, that is one thing to look at right off the rip. But in general, Zheleznyakova, she's a pretty decent kickboxer. But Melissa Mullins, same thing out here. She's going to want to get this fight to the ground, and I think she will be able to against Zheleznyakova. Now, in their first fight, before the fight did hit the ground, Dharya was doing her thing, beating up Melissa Mullins. And Melissa Mullins, she had that loss a couple fights ago to Nora Cornoli. Nora Cornoli, also a pretty good kickboxer, and when she couldn't get Cornoli to the ground, things started going weird for Melissa Mullins. So she has to get this fight to the ground. I think she does get this fight to the ground. The one thing to note, though, is that Mullins has been struggling on the scale as of late. She missed weight against Nora Cornoli. She then missed weight in her last fight against Klaudia Sygula as well. So she is struggling on the scale. Not sure where her, health is exactly in that context, but I think she does get the fight to the ground. She's fought Dharya before. She was able to take her down then. I think she can still take her down now as well. Dharya hasn't really shown crazy improvements. She's coming off a loss to Aileen Perez, who, Perez took her down, choked her out. So I think Mullins will do the same thing here. I think Mullins can get this one done inside the distance against Dharya. The weight misses is something interesting. I think it's something to look out for. But outside of that, Mullins should be the pick. Let's move on to the next matchup. Next fight on the card, we got Ismail Naurdiev versus Jun-Young Park. And, Naurdiev in his second stint in the UFC right now. He made his second debut 7 months ago against Bruno Silva. Looked pretty dominant in that performance, but that being said, there's a caveat. Bruno Silva in his last 4 fights has looked absolutely terrible, pretty checked out of fighting. Most people have been dominating Bruno Silva as of late, so not really crazy to dominate Bruno Silva in 2025, to be honest. Jun-Young Park, on the other hand, coming off that split decision win to Brad Tavares, and I'm going to pick Naurdiev here. I'm going to lean towards the underdog. I think that Naurdiev's second stint is kind of giving me like Youssef Zalal's second stint type of vibes. I know that's probably just because they're both from Morocco. That's probably why I'm saying that, but I'm getting that type of vibes from Ismail Naurdiev here. I think that, he's a good kickboxer. He's really good in range. He's going to have a bigger octagon to work with here. Jun-Young Park, pretty strong wrestler, will crash in, be kind of heavy on the feet, and, he won't really have too much technique. And I just think that Ismail Naurdiev, if he can keep this fight in space, he can kind of touch up Jun-Young Park. I think he can, maybe try to throw in some offensive wrestling here to throw Jun-Young Park off his game. I feel like Naurdiev has the tools, if he mixes his game up well here. If he just tries to, defend takedowns and stay pretty, Park will probably just be too tough and, too much forward pressure where he'll just outwork Naurdiev a little bit. So that's one thing to note. But if Naurdiev, wants to get gritty in this fight too, wants to kind of fight back with a little bit of aggression himself, get some takedowns of his own, or, just shoot it to kind of keep Jun-Young Park thinking about him shooting as well. If he kind of mixes it all up, puts it all together, he has the skills separately. I think he can put it together here. I'm going to go with I'm going to go with Ismail Naurdiev to beat Jun-Young Park this week. And let's move on to the next matchup. Next matchup, we got Seokhyeon versus Oban Elliot. And I'm all over the Welsh gangster. He was a pretty big favorite in this fight. I think it makes sense. Seokhyeon coming off that win in the Contender Series where, he did look pretty decent. But just in general, he's a heavy-handed striker. He plots forward. I just don't really like his movement. I think he's pretty heavy on the front foot. I think he's a little bit flat-footed out there, and he moves, pretty slow, kind of like a big heavyweight boxer almost. And then Oban Elliot, I kind of just like the way he moves a bit more. I think he's going to be a bit harder to hit in this matchup. Both these guys throw about the same amount of volume of strikes per minute. So I don't think Oban Elliot's going to, crazy out volume dance on Seokhyeon this weekend. But I think that Oban Elliot's going to have a bit better defense, a bit better footwork. He's going to land more clean. He's going to be a little bit harder to hit than Seokhyeon throughout the fight. And I just think that eventually, Oban Elliot's going to land something big here. Both these guys, both of their 2 losses in their pro careers have come by knockout. So, look for the under in this fight. I think that both these guys are knockout artists and, both their losses have come by knockout. So their chins can be tested. I just think that Elliot is much more likely to test Co's chin first. So I'm going to go with Elliot to win. I do like it. I mean, I can understand that why he would be a big favorite here. He's also got all the UFC experience on his side. Seokhyeon 11-2 record, but a little bit weird on the level of competition side. So that's what I'm going to look out for. Most of the things kind of point to Oban Elliot here. I'm going to lean towards Elliot to get it done, probably by knockout. Let's move on to the next matchup. Next up, we got Mohammed Naimov versus Bogdan Grad, and I like Mohammed Naimov here to get this one done. Naimov coming off that win to Khan Offley. Prior to that, he did have a loss to Felipe Lima, and I like Mohammed Naimov. He's a pretty powerful striker, has good wrestling, pretty decent prospect out of Tajikistan in general. I think that in that one loss to Felipe Lima, I really like how, in my opinion, I think he might have been 2-0 going into that third round. I think all 3 judges had it 1-1 going into that third round, but Felipe Lima, man, he's not an easy person to keep up with. He's looked absolutely great since he's got into the UFC. He's 14-1. He's got into the UFC, choked out Mohammed Naimov in his debut, and that was in Saudi Arabia, I'm pretty sure, or in Abu Dhabi, one or the other. And then he comes in and he just destroys Miles Johns. And Miles Johns is a kind of a tough fighter to just come out there and just UD. I think he 30-27 Miles Johns across all cards. Johns has, real good wrestling, powerful overhands, kind of like a mini Michael Chandler type of fighter. So it's interesting, someone like Felipe Lima coming out here just looking great in the UFC. And Mohammed Naimov, he picked up the first round against Lima. I thought the second round was super close. I think he could give it to Naimov, but I think most judges gave that one to Lima. He goes out there in the third round, and, Lima is able to find the choke on him. But that's just kind of the level of fighter Mohammed Naimov is. Bogdan Grad, on the other hand, I think, he's going to have an advantage here when it comes to the kicks. His kicking game is pretty good. Striking in general, though, I think Naimov can keep up. But Naimov is going to mix in takedowns in this fight for sure. And, maybe Bogdan Grad does get like a knockout here, something like crazy, like a flash knockout or something like that. But outside of that, I see Naimov getting this one done on the cards. I think he mixes in the wrestling. I think he has, more paths to victory here, more tools to kind of mix up against Bogdan Grad. The kicking game definitely does worry me. If, Grad kind of stays kind of far away and keeps this fight on the feet, he could make it look close. But I think Naimov should get it done. He's looked good. That one loss to Felipe Lima, to be honest, in my books, is a pretty decent loss, aging really well. And I don't know if Bogdan Grad is kind of on that level just yet. So I'm going to go Naimov. Let's move on to the next matchup. Next fight on the card, we got Nazim Sadikov versus Nicholas Mata. And, I'm all over Nazim Sadikov here. I think Nazim Sadikov does get this one done. Sadikov is extremely dangerous. He's coming off a great win against Ismail Bonfim. And, Bonfim was doing well on the feet. That was a doctor's stoppage. But Sadikov caught him clean. He's the one who created that cut. So that is something to look out for. I think Bonfim, Bonfim's a real good prospect too on that side. Nicholas Mata, on the other hand, he did get finished by Manuel Torres almost 2 years ago. After that, he does have a couple wins. He's got a win against Tom Nolan, and then his last fight, a win against Mashate Hayesh here. And I just think that Nicholas Mata, while, he's a decent prospect, I don't think Nicholas Mata's trash by any regard. I just think that Sadikov is super dangerous. I think he's a better wrestler in this matchup too. I think on the feet, he brings a ton of danger with the kicks. I'm going to go with Sadikov to win this one. Mata could land something big, maybe like an overhand. But outside of that, I just see the fight playing out in Sadikov's favor. I think he gets this one done inside the distance, probably by knockout. Let's move on to the next matchup. This one is pretty tricky. We got Miktabek Orolbai versus Tofik Musayev. Musayev is making his UFC debut here in Azerbaijan. He's a hometown fighter. He is 35 years old, so pretty interesting age to make your UFC debut. But Musayev, 22-5, has a ton of MMA experience. He is a really good fighter in his own right. Miktabek Orolbai, on the other hand, been in the UFC for all we know who this guy is. Really good wrestler. Coming off that loss to Mateusz Rebecki, which was probably one of the most insane fights I've seen lately in general. That was like an absolute war. Some real like Roman gladiator shit was going down in that fight against Rebecki. And I think that, Orolbai here, he's going to have the advantage to take this fight to the ground. Musayev, though, is tough. Musayev is probably the better striker in this matchup for sure. I think that Musayev's definitely make this fight look pretty close, especially if you defend some of the takedowns and, we see Orolbai kind of get hurt on the feet like he did against Rebecki. I think this is actually a pretty similar matchup to Orolbai's last fight, which is interesting to kind of pick Orolbai here because he did obviously lose that fight to Rebecki, but I just think that, Musayev poses real danger on the feet to Orolbai here. If Orolbai does get hurt big like he did, he could drop rounds, but I think that Orolbai can get, Musayev to the ground. He can implement that, nonstop wrestling that he does like to implement. So I'm going to lean Miktabek Orolbai. Even in that, Rebecki fight, we saw that fight went like all the way to the cards, and Orolbai never quit on himself. He looked like he was about to die out there. He lost so much blood, and he's still just kind of going for it. And I think if that fight goes into a fourth round, I think he gets Rebecki out of there. So if that was a 5-round fight, he gets Rebecki out of there. To the final bell, this guy does not quit on himself. He stays fighting. He fought through like probably some of the most damage I've seen, as of late. I'm surprised that fight was never stopped like prior to that third round. But Orolbai doesn't quit on himself. He gritted it through. So I'm going to think that, someone like that, with that much kind of like dog behind them, it's really hard for me to pick against Orolbai after that fight because he did show that, he's game for whatever the fuck happens in a fight. So I'm going to go with Miktabek Orolbai. I think he can, implement the grappling. I think if he does get hurt, it's going to look a little bit of like that Rebecki fight. And that Rebecki fight at the end of the day could have still gone either way. So I'm going to go Orolbai. I think this one could look close though. 35 years old, making his debut. Musayev, don't love it. Let's move on to the next matchup. All right, guys, this next fight does feel like a real big setup. We got Curtis Blaydes versus Rizvan Kunayev. And, Curtis Blaydes been top 5 in the heavyweight division for as long as I can remember. He does only really lose to real good heavyweights. Like, and I say real, I mean like the really like Tom Aspinall. He lost to Sergey Pavlovich. He did get knocked out by Derek Lewis. Prior to that, he lost to Francis Ngannou. So these are like the fighters that, Curtis Blaydes does lose to. Now he's getting Rizvan Kunayev, who's making his UFC debut. And, Kunayev, he did win the PFL. That did turn into a no contest, though, because he got popped for, like, a ton of steroids. So this guy was super juiced up. But he did beat Renan Ferreira on steroids. That's the guy who Francis Ngannou just beat in the PFL, if you didn't know. So, I mean, I don't know. This fight seems like kind of a weird fight. Russian from Dagestan making his debut against a top 5 heavyweight, and they've like rebooked this fight multiple times. They didn't move on from this matchup. It got, Blades, or I think Kunaev, one of them pulled out the first time. Then it got rescheduled the second time. Now it's got rescheduled again for a third time. So they really want this fight to happen. Something about this just seems super off to me. Curtis Blades is going to have to be the pick, though, here. I think that, he's got good wrestling. And, Kunaev does have decent, striking on the feet. Curtis Blades' boxing has improved over the years. He has shown some pretty decent boxing. But, I don't know what the hell's going to happen here, man. I think that Kunaev, he could knock him out. Curtis Blades doesn't use his wrestling, which is like the one thing that just kind of worries me. I think if Blades comes out here and takes Kunaev down, there's nothing Kunaev can really do. I don't know if Kunaev is going to be as good as advertised. Curtis Blades, though, minus 275. Don't feel like playing that at all. Kunaev plus 215. I just don't think he's better than Curtis Blades, so don't want to touch that either. I have no idea what the hell's going to happen here. I'm going to go with Curtis Blades. He's a more proven guy, the UFC experience. I think he's better. I think he can just take Kunaev down if he really wants to. Like I said, though, we haven't seen Blades use his wrestling, so I can't trust him to do that. And then when it comes to striking, I think Kunaev might actually be a little bit better. Blades has shown improved boxing, but it's heavyweights. Both these guys can knock the other one out. Blades has been chinned. You could say it's by like people like Tom Aspinall, Pavlovich, Lewis, and Ngannou, which is, obviously the people who have chinned him. But, he's been chinned before. Kunaev might bring in the same type of power. So I'm going to stay far away from this one. I'm going to pick Curtis Blades. But, if you want to bet on this, have fun. The Kunaev stuff, just sounds like a trap. Maybe I'm tripping because it's like a Russian, Dagestani, fighter coming in, making his debut. But they've booked this 3 times. The UFC really wants this matchup to happen. Who knows what the hell's going to go down. So I'm going to pick Curtis Blades. Let's move on to the next matchup. If you're betting on this one, good luck to you. All right, in the co-main event, we got Rafael Fiziev versus Ignacio Bahamondes, and I'm going to go with Ignacio Bahamondes here. Not sure if I really want to bet this just yet. The line has been interesting. About, early last week, we saw Bahamondes at a plus 105 underdog. Fiziev, it kind of settled into a pick'em, and now Fiziev going into the fight is looking like he is going to be the underdog, maybe around the same plus 110 range, with Bahamondes settling around the plus 125, minus 125, minus 130 range. So I'm going with Bahamondes here. I think that, the length is one thing for sure. Fiziev, we know he's a pretty decent striker. Just looking back at his resume, some things just don't pop out maybe as much as it did prior to that first loss to Justin Gaethje. I really thought Fiziev was on his way up, but, his wins, looking back on it, don't really pop, like I just said. He's coming off that second loss to Justin Gaethje, and, that was a good fight, but I just think that Bahamondes, he brings more of a grappling threat than Gaethje for sure. We know Gaethje is a good wrestler, but we also know that he doesn't give a shit to use that ever in his fights. Bahamondes, coming off that submission to Jalen Turner, he's long, he's lanky, he does have good subs off his back too. I think overall he's just like better, more well-rounded than Rafael Fiziev for sure. Bahamondes also be training with, Bilal Mohammed a lot. I think he's one of his main training partners, so he will have that in the tank as well. And then on top of that, in the striking, he's dynamic, he's rangy, he's going to be, have a reach advantage on almost everyone he fights. Fiziev, on the other hand, going to be way better than Bahamondes in the pocket, especially. He's going to have to crash in, get into that range. Bahamondes uses his range pretty well. He does fight behind the jab pretty well too. He has decent kicks as well. So I'm going to go with Bahamondes slightly. I think that overall, Bahamondes is a little bit more dangerous. I think he can put Fiziev out potentially. I think he can sub Fiziev. I don't really see Fiziev, on the other hand, putting Bahamondes out. I think that, Fiziev could win a decision. He could break that range a lot, not get taken down, and just kind of beat Ignacio Bahamondes up in the pocket. And, Bahamondes from time to time can kind of be drawn into a firefight in the pocket, which normally doesn't, favor him because he is always going to be the longer guy in the matchup. So I think Bahamondes is going to win. I think he has slightly more tools. I think the line is kind of exactly where I would put it, around that minus 120 range for Bahamondes. Should be a super close fight, though. At the end of the day, Fiziev has just fought better opponents. We know he can go toe-to-toe with people like Justin Gaethje. He can have close fights with people like Justin Gaethje. We haven't seen Bahamondes do that just yet, so I can understand some hesitation on the Bahamondes side. It is a little bit of a hype train building up on Ignacio. There might be a little bit of a check coming soon. It could be this weekend. I don't think it's this weekend. I think that Bahamondes does get through this one test for him here against Rafael Fiziev, but we're about to find out. I'm going to lean Bahamondes. Like I said, don't know if I'd play this just yet. I think it's going to look pretty close, but I think the finishing equity is on the Bahamondes side, and he has slightly more tools going through 3 rounds, so I'm going to have to lean his way here. Let's move on to the next matchup. Up next, we got the main event. We got Jamahal Hill versus Khalil Rountree Jr., and I'm going to go with Jamahal Hill here. kind of went back and forth on this fight. I think the first couple rounds, I'm going to look real stupid picking Jamahal Hill. I think Khalil Rountree, he is obviously like the Muay Thai fighter versus Jamahal Hill's kind of pure boxing style in this fight. So you're going to see Khalil Rountree mix it up more. He's going to throw those leg kicks, which are going to be interesting, at least early doors for someone like a Jamahal Hill. Maybe Jamahal Hill goes for some takedowns here. I don't know if he will. Realistically, I see most of this fight just kind of staying standing. I think Hill could potentially shoot if he really wants to, but I doubt it. I think that Hill kind of sits in there, settles into his boxing range, and I think he does eat a lot early. And Khalil Rountree has power too. I think Rountree can put Jamahal Hill out early, if he really tries. So, well, not if he really tries, but I think there is a chance that Khalil Rountree does put Jamahal Hill out early here. But I'm gonna have to go with Jamahal Hill, man. I think that he does settle into the boxing pretty well. I think we've seen Jamahal Hill go 5 rounds before. We've seen Khalil Rountree slow down in fights before. So I'm going to also think that the 5 rounds is a real kind of issue here for Khalil Rountree. I think that Jamahal Hill will settle in that second, third, 4th round, and you're going to see him really pick it up. I think he gets a late knockout here, to be honest. I think Jamahal Hill putting Khalil Rountree out in the 4th round, pretty similar to Alex Pereira. I think that Jamahal Hill is going to start really picking up the pace on him in the 3rd and 4th round. I think Rountree is going to be, looking good early, but I think as Hill kind of finds his range, adapts to the style of Khalil Rountree, I think that over 5 rounds, Hill's the better fighter out of the two of these guys. So I'm going to go with Jamahal Hill. If this was a 3-round fight, I think I would end up picking Khalil Rountree here. Khalil Rountree could put him out early, but I think Hill, can put him out late and can take this all 5 and, beat him on the card. So I'm going to go with Jamahal Hill to win this matchup. And yeah, that'll do it for all the picks and predictions for UFC Azerbaijan. Thank you guys for tapping in. If you do want to check out our premium membership where we do have, premium bets up, you can check out all our picks. You can see our over-unders for every single fight when it comes to round lines. Check out betklpicks.com for $20 a month. It really helps support the channel, helps support our content. We do some pretty cool short-form content as well, so check that out on our Instagram. And yeah, outside of that, good luck to everyone this week. I will see you guys for next week's predictions.